Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the informational webinar for the Michelson Spark Grants Digital Equity Round. My name is Ryan Erickson Kulas. I am a program officer here at the Michelson 20mm Foundation and also part of the grant committee. I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves as well. Miguel, do you want to start?
Sure. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Miguel Leon, Program Officer with the Michelson 20mm Foundation. Happy that you're joining us this morning.
And hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Levinson. I am the Digital Equity Team Lead for the Michelson 20mm Foundation, and I, too, am excited to connect with all of you.
So a quick agenda of what we'll be going through today. So first, we will provide an overview of the Michelson 20mm Foundation, give you a better understanding of the work that we do and the initiatives that we're interested in supporting. Then we'll specifically talk about the Spark Grant program, why we have the Rapid Response Fund that we do, what we are looking to fund for this particular cycle, and how we evaluate proposals. From there, we'll take a look at what our application process looks like. And then finally, we will highlight previous awardees within the Spark Grant program. And then at the very end, we will review the Q&A. So if you do have questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A section. And again, at the end of this presentation, we will get to those. So the Michelson 20mm Foundation was founded by Dr. Gary K. Michelson. He is a retired orthopedic spinal surgeon who made his fortune in inventing and then patenting medical devices. And 20mm really got its start when just over 10 years ago, Dr. Michelson saw a story in a local newspaper about students at Santa Ana College who were unable to continue in their studies, not because of their academic performance, but because of the high cost of textbooks. So he started a scholarship at that institution, but realized that that didn't address the heart of the issue. And so he gave just over $1 million grant to OpenStax, which is a nonprofit that publishes openly licensed textbooks. Since that time, we have grown as a foundation to incorporate many areas of access and success for students. In addition to 20mm, Dr. Michelson is also the founder of Michelson Found Animals, as well as the Michelson Medical Research Foundation. And just quickly, what we look to do at the Michelson 20mm Foundation. We are looking to accelerate the progress towards a more just world by investing in tech entrepreneurs, change makers, and policy to catalyze scalable innovations in the knowledge economy. We're looking to activate humanity's full potential through equitable educational and economic opportunities. And that's sort of our mission and our guiding North Star in all the work that we do. Now, we go about that in a variety of different ways. And we have 7 main areas of focus for our work that we'll touch on very briefly before talking about our Spark Grant program. So the first is the Michelson Institute for Intellectual Property. As I previously mentioned, Dr. Michelson made his fortune in inventing medical devices and then patenting those devices. And so he is very passionate about bringing intellectual property education to the masses. He wants students, faculty, inventors, and entrepreneurs to feel empowered and have an understanding about intellectual property, how to capitalize on that. And so he's created a wealth of resources, curriculum, textbooks that faculty can incorporate into their education, whether it be in business school, engineering school, etc. We also do impact investing work at the Michelson 20mm Foundation. These are generally equity investments in for-profit ed tech ventures. We primarily focus on startups that are looking to reinvent post-secondary education as well as the future of work. We most recently had an accelerator program with Village Capital around the impact of work. And all of our impact investing is really rooted in the overall larger mission of the foundation which is to have students be able to access affordable, equitable, and high quality educational and vocational experiences. And then some of the other areas of our work that I'll mention briefly. The first is our Open Educational Resources Initiative. And this is actually one of the things that I work on in addition to the Spark Grant program. These are openly licensed educational materials that not only lower the cost of higher education for students where they don't have to pay for a commercial textbook, but will also increase their student learning outcomes. In addition to that, we have the Michelson 20mm Smart Justice Initiative, where we look at the intersection of the higher education system and the criminal justice system and look to bring educational opportunities to those that have been involved with the justice system, either currently incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, as well as with an eye towards economic opportunities for those individuals. I'll pass it over to Miguel to talk about our last two initiatives.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Student basic needs. I actually oversee student basic needs here at 20mm. Through this initiative, we seek to increase persistence and graduation rates through systems change, research, and technological innovations that help students meet their basic needs. We support efforts that address the real cost of college, including the non-tuition costs that place students in positions where they face food insecurity, housing insecurity, and overall financial instability. We've tackled the inequities in the management and distribution of emergency student aid, funded research to fully grasp the impact of COVID on students, and are focused on uplifting the need to provide permanent funding for student basic needs work in California. Okay, next slide. Another one of our initiatives is digital equity. Through this initiative, Michelson 20mm plays the role of convener, specifically in philanthropy, to accelerate digital inclusion investments. We also launch programs that surface innovative connectivity solutions and technologies. We scale best in-field initiatives working to eliminate the digital divide and support education and awareness efforts that surface policy solutions that promote digital equity. Digital inequity is one of the most pressing social justice issues of our time. It's a forgotten social determinant of health that dictates whether or not we are able to access education, healthcare, search and apply for jobs, and even meaningfully engage in our democracy. It is embedded in systemic and historical injustices that poor communities of color have experienced since time immemorial. Digital redlining is as real now around access to broadband as it was when redlining denied homeownership to poor people of color in 20th century America. And it continues to segregate poor communities of color by perpetuating their poverty and denying them access to any opportunity to thrive. In response to digital inequity, 20mm has so far partnered with the Los Angeles Community College District in their efforts to help students transition to remote learning, funded research by the Education Trust West to fully grasp digital equity gaps experienced by students during the pandemic, and launched Connecting California, a virtual convening series which aims to increase awareness across our philanthropic community of the impacts of digital inequity, as well as explore case studies of proven models and solutions implemented in state and around the country. We coordinate our efforts with an eye to both near-term needs made more urgent by COVID-19, as well as necessary long-term solutions that can sustainably close the digital divide once and for all. Most recently, the Michelson 20mm Foundation launched the California Digital Divide Innovation Challenge in partnership with the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, General Motors, Genentech, and other organizations. The challenge seeks to identify and develop technology that will make affordable broadband internet access universally accessible across the state without exception. Inventors, entrepreneurs, researchers, and other innovators from the public and private sectors are encouraged to participate for a chance to win a $1 million prize as recognition for work that substantially improves the lives of millions of Californians. The competition is set to run from this month until July 2021, or until winning proposals have been selected. For more information, visit cde.ca/gov or email innovationchallenge@cde.ca.gov. Back to you, Ryan.
Great, and we'll actually have Hannah walk us through a little bit of how the Spark program operates and what we're looking to do for this cycle.
Thanks, Miguel. Thanks, Ryan. Hi, everyone. I did see one comment in the Q&A about audio difficulties. So if there's anything that you've missed that feels like a critical piece of information about what we're covering, drop it in the Q&A. We'll try to address all of those before the end of the webinar. And continue to do so with different questions that you have about our digital equity program, about Spark grants, or about any of the other information we've shared with you, and we will answer those to the best of our ability at the end of the call. So Spark grants, to the information Ryan started sharing about the different initiatives that Michelson 20 Million Minds Foundation offers, this one is relatively new. It was launched in 2019 and meant to really fill a gap in philanthropy and grant making. We saw that a lot of our interlocutors and partners in philanthropy were not able to turn around and meet urgent or real-time needs of different organizations and initiatives that are grant seeking for really urgent issues and requests. So this is a solution to that gap. It's an innovative, just-in-time grant making process and really specifically focused on innovative and scalable activities. The goal is to fund either initiatives, programs, research, or ideas that have the possibility to reach real scale and impact a lot of people. They can also be partnered opportunities. So it can be your work with another organization. It can be your work funded by other funding entities. The Michelson 20 Million Minds Foundation would not need to cover the entire cost of a program for which someone was applying to the Spark grant to be qualified. So some of the niceties, that's the vision and mission. The commitment that we're making around time and speed is to make decisions on all of the applications submitted within 15 business days. So that's 3 formal weeks. And a little bit more of the timeline is mentioned in later slides, but know that it's a rolling application and turnaround time. So 3 weeks from when an LOI or an initial letter of intent is received is when we hope to turn around responses for whether or not a proposal receives funding. If you want to jump to the next slide, please, Ryan. So a little more that's important to note. The program is open to US-based not-for-profit organizations and educational institutions only. We've had some really, really innovative social enterprises show up to some of these webinar conversations in rounds previous. And while we do have an impact investing arm at Michelson 20 Million Minds Foundation, this is meant for not-for-profit organizations or not-for-profit initiatives. So take note of that. 501c3 organizations are eligible, for-profit organizations are not. And for this funding cycle for digital equity, the funding will be focused specifically on organizations that are doing work in the state of California. So if you're doing great digital equity work and that does not impact Californians, it's ineligible for this particular funding opportunity. That said, if you've got a great idea, something that you're working on that you'd like to share with our team, please do feel free to get in touch, and we'll share that information about how to get in touch with us at the end of the webinar again as well. We can have a conversation about some potential other opportunities, but this grant is for California serving initiatives only. So a little more information about past Spark grant rounds. We've done rounds in Smart Justice. We've done rounds in Student Basic Needs. We typically fund 3 to 5 proposals per round. And we received, just to give you a sense for the size of the pool of applications, 30 proposals for our last Student Basic Needs round and 75 for our last Smart Justice round. So quite a range there. This is our first round in digital equity, so we're expecting it to be relatively competitive, but that's to give you a sense for how many applicants we've seen in past for the program to date.
Great, Thank you, Hannah. And now I'm going to start to walk us through how we as a grant committee evaluate proposals as they come in. And generally, what we do is look at 6 different scales or dimensions of evaluation. And we'll walk through each of these, but just to kind of quickly highlight, 1, baseline criteria, 2, how it aligns to our focus area, 3, the potential for impact, 4, the measurability of that impact, 5, the long-term sustainability, both of the project as well as the organization, and then finally, the scalability of the work. So I'll talk a bit about the baseline criteria. So our grants are up to $25,000. We ask organizations to submit the dollar amount that they are requesting. And generally, we are looking for proposals that are project-based. So they contain a set of milestones. Perhaps it's a pilot program that you're looking to scale up. And again, we'll give some specific examples at the end of this presentation of grants that we have funded in the past. Some of the things that we do not fund are general operating expenses, ongoing inventory, any sort of working capital. However, we do allow our grant funds to be allocated towards staff time. So if there is a project that you are thinking about and you'd like to have a portion of your budget go towards salary, that's totally within bounds of our work. Generally, we are looking to see projects or proposals that have an outcome within about a 6-month to 1-year timeframe. Obviously, that can vary based on the proposal, but I would say generally that is the sweet spot that we see. And that could be initial outcomes. It doesn't necessarily have to be sort of everything wrapped up to completion, but that's the timeframe in which we are looking to see the impact. And I think, as Hannah mentioned previously, we realize that the complexity and the scale of the digital equity issue is a challenge. And so we realize that, our $25,000 may be just a portion of a project. So we can have our funds as part of a larger overall budget. I think one of the things that we would ask is just that you provide us a bit more information around, who those other funding sources are and how much our dollars would be as part of said larger project. I'll toss it back over to Hannah, who will talk a little bit about the specifics for what we're looking to fund in and around digital equity.
Thanks, Ryan. And I see a lot of questions coming into the Q&A for specificities around not-for-profit versus for. Keep them coming. I think we'll just get through the content and then try to answer all of those in one Q&A at the end of the conversation. But yes, back to Ryan's points about scope and scale, the idea here is really to fund projects that are supporting systems level strategies that have the potential to create impact at scale and even inform public policy around digital equity and digital connectivity. So this and the following 2 slides will give an overview of, and really you can see a lot of detail about each of the focus areas that this Spark Grant round is covering. You can see this information again on our website, so you don't need to necessarily take a screenshot. If this information is new to you, it's still available online. And to answer one question quickly about whether or not this webinar will be recorded, it is, so you will have this information to refer back to if you missed something that was important. So high level education and awareness around low cost internet options or affordable accessibility initiatives. We have an interest in finding programs that are leveraging existing infrastructure or funding to get that information out to Californian populations. We've got a couple of examples here of public programs that can be good co-sponsors or partners in those efforts. We are also interested in initiatives that are lifting up community and student experiences, particularly as we've kind of emphasized throughout the webinar to this point. The Michelson 20 Million Minds Foundation is focused on access and equity in education. And so the student voice really is very important for us to get in front of larger audiences. And finally, including those perspectives in conversations with elected officials, again, toward the possibility of affecting public policy, particularly policies that have to do with digital connectivity and access. Next slide. Relatedly, or related to Ryan's point about larger initiatives that could be co-funded, this category is probably most ripe for that, or certainly a good example of that. And just to make note, we will walk through some examples of proposals that have been funded in past, inclusive of an example of research, so that you can have a sense for what that might look like. What we're specifically interested in for this round and for digital equity initiatives is research that helps map digital equity gaps, including information about broadband adoption rates, broadband bandwidth speed and latency, device access, digital literacy rates, or digital literacy program accessibility. Next slide, please. Looks like there's some overlap with the original education awareness slide, but again, more here. We are interested as well in initiatives that scale digital navigator models across the state, in particular programs that are building on, again, existing infrastructure, existing or innovative connectivity solutions to make them more accessible, and in particular programs that are led by community-based organizations, established not-for-profits, or government agencies. Additionally, we are interested in seeing proposals that highlight or accelerate successful initiatives to provide tenants in multi-dwelling units, apartment buildings, with access to connectivity services, and especially through multiple internet service providers. So in other words, ensuring that people are not at the, or are not subject to being in a monopoly or duopoly situation for their connectivity options. Next slide. Ooh, I think that's me.
Great. Thank you so much, Hannah. So those are really the meat and potatoes, I would say, of sort of what we are looking to fund for this cycle. One point that I will make, as we've had this question raised in previous funding cycles, there is no advantage towards selecting multiple of those focus areas when submitting a proposal. I would say a lot of them are very disparate, and so it would be probably a challenge to have something in the research area as well as something in the scaling up best practices area. However, we ask organizations that are submitting to select which of those focus areas. So if you are going to be impacting multiple, obviously you can select, but again, there's no advantage per se to that. In terms of looking at the evaluation of the proposals, one of the things that we definitely are looking for is, what is the potential for impact? How many individuals do you see impacting this work? What is best case? What is worst case? And we're also not necessarily just looking for the short-term impact of the grant dollars, but also what you see as the long-term impact of that work. We realize that a $25,000 grant may be seeding a pilot program or seeding a new idea, proving out a concept. And while the impact in the short term may be small, the impact a year, 5 years down the road may be longer. So definitely include that type of information when you are submitting your proposal. Oh, sorry, jumping ahead too much. So the next thing that we'll look at is how you propose to measure that impact. We ask organizations who are submitting a proposal to provide us with the metrics as to what they deem their project or their proposal to be successful. So we want to get a better understanding of how you're going to report out success from this. We want to get a better understanding of what the timeline is for those success metrics. So all of that should be included within your proposal. And then, as I mentioned at the top, we're interested in getting a better understanding of the long-term sustainability of the project as well as of the organization in general. So we're interested in learning about who the team is that would be working on this project. We're interested in knowing about any partner organizations that you all would be working with to affect that. And then we also want to have a good understanding of what are the financials of the organization? What are your revenue streams? Are you solely dependent on fundraising via events? Do you have a mix of grant dollars, individual donors, et cetera? Is there a social enterprise opportunity as part of the work that you're doing? All just to get a better sense of the sustainability of the organization. And then lastly, we're looking for scalability. So again, we're really interested in sort of having impact at scale or impact that would inform public policy with the realization that that may be coming longer down the line than what, say, the grant period would be. But we want to get a sense of how you all see the potential for scale within the project that you're submitting. So those are kind of the dimensions of the evaluation. I'll turn it back over to Hannah, and she'll talk a bit about sort of the mechanics of how you submit a proposal and what that process looks like.
Thank you, Ryan. So we use a grants intake and review software called Submittable. It is an online portal through which applicants will submit both letters of inquiry, LOIs, as well as full applications if you are invited to apply by us upon review of your LOI and getting advanced to that next stage. The portal for this round will open on March 8th, and it will remain open until March 29th. That's the URL for the Spark Grants program, and where you can find a link once the portal opens up on that date. I would suggest not only bookmarking that, but once you submit your application, to white label Submittable so that notifications that you receive from that application software come directly to you and you can see them in your email, as opposed to them being filtered to spam, which Gmail and other clients sometimes will do for automated emails from these types of softwares. So the LOI and application both are available to download from the Spark Grants website already today. You can go ahead and do that right now. You can get that started right now. And we do suggest, if you have the time and are able, to get that ready and apply early. If you're able, get your LOI submitted right on the 8th. Again, these will be reviewed on a rolling basis, and we intend to fund between 3 and 5 proposals. And if we receive 5 successful proposals before the end of the window, that's better luck for people who have submitted early. So there's a little more information from Ryan in the chat about Submittable, how to use it, a few tips. One other thing to note is that you will get a copy of your LOI and your application when you submit. So Submittable will email those back to you so that you can keep a copy of what you've sent in through our system. Next slide, just a little more, nitty gritty of what that looks like. So you'll create an account on Submittable. You will want to whitelist Submittable in your email client. The communications from us will come through that Submittable channel. And if you have a technical issue with or some trouble with submitting, uploading your LOI or any of the attachments that you want to include, send those emails to support@submittable.com. Quick overview of who will be on this grants committee. So you've met at least 3 of us, Ryan, myself, and Miguel, who are on the call today. Other folks who will be reviewing proposals include Phil Kim, the president of the Michael 20 Million Minds Foundation, and Myra Lambera, the vice president of programs and operations for the foundation. Finally, a little bit more about the evaluation process. After the LOI is submitted, we'll do an initial assessment. The goal is to get that turned around and to let you know whether you are invited to apply or submit a full application within 6 business days. So any proposal that advances will be asked to complete a full application. That process or step in the process can't be skipped. And those applications will be assessed separately and a follow-up call scheduled with anyone who advances to the finalist stage. This entire process will take place again within 15 business days of the original LOI submission date. There's a little visualization of what the process looks like. LOI comes in, decision is made about the LOI and whether or not a full application will be invited. Applicants complete the full application and submit that through Submittable. If advancing, we'll have a conversation over the phone, and then a final decision will be made about funding. Again, all within 15 business days, so a few more calendar days. And now I'll turn it over to Ryan and Miguel to give you some examples of past fund recipients. Thanks.
Thank you, Hannah. Appreciate it. And just a quick note, it's one of the things that we hope to do by Spark Grants is really make it as easy as possible for you all to evaluate and really see whether or not this is a good fit in terms of a grant for your program and or organization. And hence the quick turnaround time. And I don't know if it was mentioned, but the LOI itself is no more than just a 500-word essay. We want to interact and communicate with folks interested in our program in such a way that you don't dedicate an exorbitant amount of time on an application that ultimately does not align with our program outcomes. And so just the structure and the process is built in a way to make it easy for us to communicate and understand whether or not we can find potential for partnership. And this section specifically, we wanted to give you all a good sense of previous grants and previous partners that we have connected with, just to give you a sense of where we like to play in terms of grant making, what programs, what target outcomes, what partners have gone through this process and with whom we've built solid partnerships with. Next slide, please. One tremendous partner that we've connected with is the Education Trust West. Actually have made a couple of grants to them. The Education Trust West advocates for educational justice and high academic achievement of all California students, particularly those of color and living in poverty. One of the grants that we made to ETW supported the development of California Digital Financial Aid Awareness Toolkit, highlighting best practices and strategies to drive increased completion rates of financial aid applications, specifically for low-income students and students of color. Another round that we made to ETW funded a survey of students in California higher education about COVID-19 related resources and support they're receiving from their institutions and their perceptions of the effectiveness of their institution's strategies. The grant also supported a digital map that illustrates the higher education system's response, including gaps in digital access and implementation of distance learning, which will drive policy change. Here, it's important to note the fact that these grants provided actionable results that could be shared with other partners. The first one in the form of a toolkit and the second one in the form of data that could inform both policy and practice. Really important there. Next slide, please. Another partner and grant that we made was to the Foundation for California Community Colleges. The Foundation for California Community Colleges is built to benefit, support, and enhance the mission of the California Community College system through support from a wide range of partner organizations and individual donations. Our grant ensured California Community College students have quick and equitable access to emergency aid and other critical support resources. Through our partnership with the FCCC, We've gotten closer to making the management and distribution of emergency student aid more efficient and more equitable. Equity, a Michelson impact portfolio company, has developed the first evidence-based and research-informed emergency aid application by using an algorithm to determine appropriate emergency aid distribution with an eye to maximize student retention. Equity has the potential to transform the emergency student aid landscape. And through Equity, students can complete an aid application within minutes, receive decisions in a few hours, and claim funds within the day. The FCCC completed a landscape analysis of California community colleges' approaches to emergency student aid and vetted Equity for all California community college campuses and established a system level contract between Equity and the CCC system. Here, it's important to note a couple of things. One, the fact that our grant has pushed systems level change at the California community colleges. Two, that that said systems level change has the potential to impact students at scale. And three, that it lies at the intersection of higher ed and technology, a space that we believe catalyzes change in a far more innovative and effective way. Next slide, please. US PERG. US PERG Educational Fund is an independent, nonpartisan group that stands up to powerful interests in support of consumers. Our grant funded a report analyzing the textbook industry's new automatic billing framework, also known as inclusive access, which has been recently adopted by major textbook publishers. Just to share a bit of background, to combat declining profits, publishers are entering into contracts with institutions of higher education that leverage their new inclusive access programs, which can be more accurately described as automatic billing. Automatic billing allows publishers to add the costs of course materials directly onto a student's tuition bill. The long-term goal of this model is to promote the usage of digital textbook access codes. These codes act as subscriptions to a publisher's digital library and homework submission platform for a set amount of time. Students are then unable to access learning materials after their subscription ends. And since they never owned a physical product, they cannot recoup costs on the used textbook market. This new model has been found to be detrimental to student affordability, and it stifles a student's ability to find course materials through other means, essentially creating a monopoly. And so although research might not seem like the most attractive thing to fund, the traction that the results from the PERG report have gotten in the battle against these predatory practices of book publishers has been incredible. The results have been shared with elected officials, cited in lawsuits against textbook publishers, and cited in public comment to the state legislature. Excellent example of a grant whose results provided a very significant actionable item. Next slide, please. Our partnership with UCI, University of California, Irvine, our grant supports a replicable demonstration project to establish the first University of California bachelor's degree granting program in a California state prison, an innovative pathway to higher education for justice-involved students. At its core, our Smart Justice Initiative aims to leverage higher education as a catalytic force for transforming the lives of justice-involved individuals, as well as reforming the justice system itself. This grant ties into these goals perfectly and plants the seed for a broader impact on the entire University of California system. Next slide, please. Our partnership with the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges and the Foundation for California Community Colleges. This grant will produce training materials and modules for the first ever statewide training for 250 plus faculty teaching in prison settings, culminating with a statewide training event in fall semester of 2021. Our Smart Justice Initiative also seeks to invest in programming policies and systems change initiatives that strengthen higher education in prison on-campus supports for justice involved students, and pathways to economic success. The impact at scale that this grant will have for justice impacted individuals is great. It'll span all of California and won't be limited to one setting or a handful of instructors, but rather all the educators seeking to use education to change the lives of individuals behind bars. And so those are just some examples of previous partnerships, partners, and grants that we've made. We hope the examples give you a better sense of the partnerships that Michelson 20mm likes to invest in. Remember to think innovative, actionable, at scale, and efforts whose results can have that multiplier effect.
Great. Thank you so much, Miguel. That was really helpful. I'll say the one thing that I will add to that, I think the UCI grant is a great example of a grant where our funds were just sort of one of the streams of revenue to prop up that project. Ours went towards, very specific planning work for the BA program within a prison setting, but obviously there are many other funding streams that would be coming into that project. So I think a good example of that. So we'll take the next 17, 18 minutes or so to answer as best we can questions in the chat. I'm going to take down this share screen just so I can see the Q&A because I'm not able to see it at the moment. But these are email addresses, very easy, just first name at 20mm.org. So if there's specific information that you would like in regards to your organization or your potential proposal, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're also available to hop on quick conversations with people or can respond via email, but we always want to make ourselves available so that we can give you feedback even before you were to submit an LOI. If you were to come to us with an idea for a proposal, we could give you a quick temperature check of, yes, this is something that we would be interested in learning more about. Please make sure you include information X, Y, and Z, or no, we don't think that this is the best fit for us at this point in time, which would then allow you all to not invest that time in submitting an LOI, because we realize that the time of our nonprofit partners are very valuable, and we want to make sure that you're spending that time doing the work and doing the impact that you're looking to, as opposed to going through kind of a longer process with us. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll kind of pop over into the Q&A, and hopefully we can start answering some of those. Oh, and I can't even see it now that I've stopped sharing my screen. So I don't know if Hannah or Miguel, you all can see it.
I can share questions that have come up and we'll answer them. We'll get through all the queries that have come in. First, from Raymond, could you please elaborate on how Michelson 20mm supports OER initiatives at community colleges?
Yeah, Raymond, if you want to email me, we can kind of discuss a little bit offline, but we have a variety of different ways in which we support OER work. Within California specifically, we actually have a hub on OER Commons that is sort of a sandbox for individuals to develop, share, vet OER resources. We're also very active on the policy front as well. So yeah, definitely please email me and happy to discuss additionally about OER. Want to make sure we kind of keep the focus on the digital equity cycle for today, but again, happy to have those conversations.
We have a question from Lisa. Please define how you define nonprofit. Is it only 501c3? Public agencies like local health departments are nonprofit, but not under 501c3.
Again, another good question. I would say generally we do trend towards 501c3s, but if there's a public agency that makes a compelling proposal to us, I think that we would be open to those types of interactions. So I think if you are a nonprofit but not a 501c3, I would recommend reaching out to us, and we can kind of have a more nuanced conversation about what you're thinking and what may make sense for us.
And my nonprofit from Onawa. My nonprofit serves all 50 states with the most of our impact in California. Are we still eligible?
Yes, definitely. As long as you're impacting people within the state of California, you would be eligible. You do not have to be like your company does not have to be residing within the state of California, as long as the impact of the work would be felt in California. But that's a great question.
Another nonprofit status question, would an org who has filed for their 501c3 and is waiting for determination be eligible?
Good question. I would say generally we do fund organizations that have been determined 501c3 eligible. But if, we'd love to learn a little bit more about, where you are in that process. So again, feel free to reach out to us directly and we can just talk to you a little bit more about your circumstance.
One from Heather, and I think this came up during your explanation, Ryan, of what the funds can go to with the Spark grants. What is general working capital?
So for instance, if you needed funds to get more inventory for a product, generally that term is used more in a for-profit setting as opposed to a nonprofit setting. I think generally what we're referring to is kind of general operating expenses. I think what we want to kind of get the point across is that we are asking that our funds are directed towards a specific project or a specific area of work. I will say the one caveat being that we do allow organizations to allocate staff time with our funds towards that work.
One from Brandy, do you have a set percentage for the amount of overhead that can be covered in the budget? Academic institutions often require a percentage of the budget be allocated for overhead.
Yep. Generally, we try to keep that number under 15% of the grant. We do have a bit of flexibility around that. So if there's a specific need for you or your proposal, we can have a conversation. But I would say 15% is generally our number.
Great.
And that's the same. Sorry, I'm seeing the questions now, but that's also the same for the indirect cost rate question.
Yeah. From Molly, do you fund direct lobbying advocacy efforts?
So no, we do not fund direct lobbying or advocacy. We are a private foundation, and so we have some restrictions around that. However, we do fund educational and awareness campaigns, but lobbying, advocacy are things that our grant dollars cannot go towards.
Great. We have one from Lauren. Hi, our organization serves nationally. Is there a specific percentage of participants in a program that need to be within California for consideration? Does it need to be a majority of participants?
That's a good question. I don't think that we necessarily have a percentage per se. I would say that we would want to see significant impact within California. So yeah, Miguel, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts or thinking around that might be helpful.
I think for this one of the things to consider is that LOI or proposal would be up against organizations that do have a main focus in California. And so in terms of the time invested in the process, would a proposal like that sort of stand the test of another organization with a more deeper focus in California? That's sort of the question to ask and really sort of consider whether or not it's the right fit. We do definitely focus on California with our work. Let's see, anonymous attendee, if our proposal is successful, are we permitted to subgrant some of the funds to partner organization? Do you allow subgranting?
Yeah, I think we would have no issues with that. I think we would just want a sense of who the subgrantees would be, what they would be doing with those funds. So just information to include within your proposal.
From Gabriel, would a program helping English language learners in California and beyond be encouraged to apply? Thank you.
Yeah, Miguel, I might defer to you on that one, just in thinking about what you're hoping to impact with the funding cycle.
I'd say, yeah, it's a subcategory of population that we think really needs to be incorporated into digital equity work. We think that it's a whole different language that folks need to learn. And if you're an English language learner, those challenges are exacerbated, especially during the current crisis that we're all living through. So if there is a multi-generational approach, a multiculturally specific approach to digital equity work, definitely of interest. Anything to add, Hannah, or?
No, I think that's really well put. Thanks, Miguel. I think we had a couple of questions on that topic, and just to let folks know, if we haven't answered your question aloud during this this Q&A back and forth, several of the questions were also answered in chat. So just take a look at that box. Your question might be answered under the Answered tab. If for some reason you don't see an answer, but your question is also not been addressed yet, feel free to pop it back in there just to make sure we cover your question.
Thanks, Hannah. From Sunil, would a public university qualify for nonprofit status?
Yes, definitely. We've funded institutions. CSULB is probably the most recent one. Oftentimes we'll work through that nonprofits foundation, but again, can be sort of flexible based on the needs of the potential grantee.
More of a logistical question from Nancy. Will you be making the deck available separate from the recording?
Yes, it will definitely be available on our webpage, probably within the next 48 hours. And then we'll be sure to include it in an email that goes out with the recording as well.
From Cyrus, do you provide smaller amounts of funding for community organizations in other areas outside of Spark Grants? It seems like a lot of these funded projects are larger in scale. We're a community center in South LA and working with justice-involved people, but on a smaller scale.
Yeah, we have, I would say, very limited opportunity for funding outside of the Spark grant vehicle, but we're always interested in seeing, what opportunities there may be. So Cyrus, I would encourage you to shoot me an email directly, and then I can put you in touch with the program officer who oversees our Smart Justice work, and she can talk to you a little bit about, what we may or may not be able to do in terms of supporting the work that you all are doing.
Anonymous attendee, can we make our phone numbers available to folks so that they can contact us directly?
Sure, I'm happy to drop my phone number in the chat. I would say probably email is a better way to get in touch with me because I'm very bad at answering my phone. I never have my ringer on, but if phone works best for people, they can call me there.
Same for myself and Hannah. Send us an email. We'll most likely hop on a Zoom call with you and or phone call if you want to discuss your organization, program, or potential submission. Let's see. From Maria, is the ideal timeline for projects approximately 1 year?
Yes, I don't know if we have an ideal, but yeah, I would say, generally we are looking for outcomes within a 6 month to 1 year timeframe. I would say on average, we probably see a range of the grant period being from 9 months to about 18 months. In very rare cases, we'll have it longer than that. And usually those are conversations that we'll have with potential grantees as they move forward. So kind of based on what their timeline is, and then also based on, what impacts there may be having. But I would say, yeah, a year is probably a good sweet spot.
From Sherida, who is working in Southern Nevada, specifically with justice impacted folks, hoping for us to connect her with folks that might help her take her program to scale. Sherida, if you shoot us an email, we can connect you with our colleague, Emily Blake, who oversees our Smart Justice Initiative. And she can hopefully direct you in the right direction. Super knowledgeable in the space. So just shoot us an email and we'll chat. From Gokul, given that we are working with chronically ill patients and COVID has impacted our pediatric partners, how flexible are you with timeline, i.e. might take more than 6 months?
Yeah, again, I think we don't have we ask organizations to tell us what their timeline is. So, feel free to set that out in the LOI as you submit it. I'll say that, we are not looking to fund projects that are going to sort of, start to bear results in 2 years time frame. I think with the amount of grant dollars that we're looking to do, we're looking to have kind of a shorter impact window than that. But I think if it's longer than 6 months, no issues there.
From Griff, are you open to education and awareness work that happens outside of formal education, i.e. public libraries? Primarily referring to this bullet point on your website, developing digital literacy curricula, educational toolkits, emergent models, or learning communities. Griff, yes, we know that public libraries have played a role in combating digital equity, especially during COVID-19. If you are working at a public library and serve as sort of an anchor institution for your local community, we'd love to hear about the work that you're doing with local leaders and organizations. And from Jody, can a consortium apply? We just launched the new Center for Innovation Design and Digital Learning. We have one partner who is a nonprofit. All of us are active in California. Would it be best for the center or our nonprofit partner to apply?
Yeah, I would say probably apply under the name of the nonprofit, because most likely that's where we would be directing the funds to, and then the nonprofit could sort of disperse as needed. But obviously, within your proposal, just include information around the consortium, but no issues with that.
From Amira, my healthcare organization based in LA works with support groups in California and throughout the US. We provide tablets and projects to facilitate their meetings. Now with COVID, we provided the support group Zoom accounts. Is this something that your foundation funds?
I might defer to you a bit, Miguel. I think that is probably not the type of project that would be super appealing to us. I think it's kind of similar to, hey, we need laptops for our students. And while yes, we realize that is a need in our community, we, with our sort of limited amount of grant dollars, want to focus on projects that have a bit more larger impact than a certain 100 or 30 or whatever participants. Miguel, is there anything else on that side of things?
No, I would agree. I think one of our lenses and focus areas is definitely scalability, and we definitely appreciate the work that you're doing, Amira. It sounds fantastic and extremely necessary, but for this round, we're focusing on that scalability of efforts. From Lila, do you ever fund legal aid organizations?
Yes, we have in the past through our Smart Justice initiative. So again, I would just reach out to us around specifics on your work, and happy to have a conversation around that.
Let's see, from Aza, is funding only for college/kid students, or does funding apply to adult students as well? I'd say yes, definitely. Bridging the digital divides for students in general is important to Michelson 20MM, and that definition of student for us is very broad. Underrepresented students specifically is one of our focus areas, but yeah, this typical definition of student doesn't always imply recent high school grad and or 20-something-year-old. So if you're working with adult learners, definitely consider applying. Yeah.
We did it right on time. Very impressive. 50 questions. But seriously, really appreciate everyone taking the time today to hop on our webinar, learn a little bit more about our priorities when it comes to funding. If there are additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, it's just our first names at 20mm.org, 20mm.org. And we're happy to respond to any inquiries via email. And if it makes sense, we can also have a quick conversation with y'all in advance of the round opening. Just a quick reminder that we will be sending out a recording of this webinar within the next 24 to 48 hours, in addition to the deck. And then it will also be posted on the Spark Grant webpage. So if you go to 20mm.org, at the top, you'll see something that will say Spark Grants. Click on that. It will also, on that page, have the focus areas already listed and then links to the LOI as well as application. So you can know in advance of the round opening on March 8th what we are looking for specifically. And then again, on March 8th, you can go right back to that webpage and there'll be a link to create your submittable account. In fact, there'll probably be a link to create your submittable account sometime this week. So just give us a bit of time. But yeah, thank you so much for everyone's time today. And hopefully everyone has a great rest of their Tuesday.